All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started then. So welcome everyone to the second of our 4 Practitioner Insight events for this summer, all part of the 2022 summer internship program with the SHEP Higher Education Consortium on Poverty. Just a reminder, everyone, this is being recorded. I'll ask several questions of Suki Tabor here to get things going, but we certainly are looking forward to your questions later on where you can turn your cameras on and ask them. So be thinking about those as we go. So my name is Tim Diet. I'm Executive Director of the Shepherd Higher Education Consortium on Poverty, or SHEP. Thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. We are very fortunate to be joined tonight by Suki Tabor from the New York Youth Bureau with the City of Ithaca. Hopefully I got that right, Suki. And so, welcome to you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule just to talk to us for a few minutes. And can you tell us a little bit about your professional journey, to your current position?
Absolutely. It's great to be here, and I appreciate everybody taking the time this evening to come out and engage with us. So both of my parents were teachers, and actually started out in college expecting to do food and nutrition, and realized quite rapidly in my freshman and sophomore year that was not the direction I wanted to head, and studied elementary education following that. And when I did my student teaching, I really figured out fairly quickly that I cared more about the whole child and less about the academics. And so that's what pointed me in the direction of working with youth in non-educational settings. So I have worked with cooperative extension in an urban outreach program. I have worked in 4-H programs and childcare. And, I've been with the Ithaca Youth Bureau for 20 years this year. So.
Wow. Well, so speaking of Ithaca, can you tell us a little bit about the community? I imagine lots of us on the call are not too familiar with the area. So.
Absolutely. Ithaca is in what we call the Finger Lakes. It's kind of in the center of the state. We're in a really beautiful area. The city of Ithaca is right at the base of one of the largest Finger Lakes, known as Cuba Lake. And we're in a county, Tompkins County, that has the city of Ithaca, but it also has some very small, very rural communities. And some of the outer reaches on the eastern and southern ends of our county, we have families that are living in the Appalachian poverty zones that have been identified by the federal government. So we have that whole spectrum, and to kind of compound the disparities, we're also a college town. So Cornell University is here, Ithaca College is here, and we have a local community college as well. And so, it's one of the favorite phrases in this area is that Ithaca is 10 square miles surrounded by reality.
And some of your service area includes, or a lot of it includes, that reality. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I suppose, what is the range of programming? What sorts of programming, do you offer? Sort of what's the overall structure of your organization?
So we're really unique as far as a youth serving organization because we are part of the City of Ithaca. So we're actually a city department. There are 2 city departments that serve youth. One is known as the Greater Ithaca Activity Center, and they provide a lot of more child care and after school programming. They're community care. And for the Youth Bureau, we provide recreation programming, everything from sports and arts to summer camp, sailing, paddleboarding, kind of you name it. Lots of rec and leisure opportunities for youth. We have a recreation support services division, which serves youth and adults with disabilities. And that division works really closely with our rec division to make sure that there's lots of inclusion for those kids with disabilities to participate alongside, their quote unquote typical peers. We also have a facility that is a pool and an ice rink known as Cass Park. And they also have a number of sports fields and are utilized by lots of local sports leagues and different programs. And then the program that, or the division that I oversee most closely as the Deputy Director of the Youth Bureau is the Youth Development Division. And we offer lots of targeted programming. We have a Big Brother, Big Sister program for, one-on-one mentorship and friendship and relationship building. We have an employment program. We call it the YES program. We have a program for young people who are interested in getting engaged in their local government, known as Ithaca Youth Council. And we have an outdoor education program that really works closely with youth to bring them together to learn leadership and friendship and other skills, all within the context of the outdoors. And then we have 2 academic mentoring and support programs. So it's a pretty wide range of programs that we offer.
Yeah, that is quite the array. And so within that, how does the socioeconomic status of the area, how does that fit into your approach to programming?
So that's one of the things that we find really, really important to think about and incorporate in all of our planning. So one of the things that we have with our recreation department is all the recreation programs have fees. And so we have a scholarship program called Every Child Has Opportunities. We call it the ECHO Fund. And that allows families, no matter what their socioeconomic status, to participate equally alongside their peers. And then in the youth development programs, like our academic mentoring programs, for example, those programs, we work closely with the schools to identify youth who are, have a lot of potential in school and maybe poverty or, other barriers, race, ethnicity, gender identity, those kinds of things are getting in the way of their school success. And so we really bring them in and work to create a community that celebrates success and, meets the kids where they are. There's a number of young people who participate in the outings program. And one of the programs that we have in the outings program is called the Pathfinders program. And that program is specifically designed because our local school district has 7 different elementary schools. Some are very rural and some are very urban that feed into 2 middle schools where they're all going to be in school together. And so those programs are specifically designed to bring 2 schools, an urban and a rural school, together for 5 weeks, doing all sorts of team building and really fun activities. They do scavenger hunts at some of our local facility, or our local parks and things like that, in order for them to build relationships both across place and across all differences. But we really try to make sure we have a balance of, kids who have means and kids who don't have means. So it's truly a blended group. Mm-hmm. We also make sure for all of our youth development programs, we provide transportation so that families who don't have that's not a barrier to their participation.
So you've talked a little bit about being able to provide scholarships and all that. Curious if you could talk a little more about sort of how does the funding work? You mentioned being part of the city, but is there any other sources of revenue that you have to go get? Or
absolutely. Certainly the city funds that we get, they really want those to be focused on city residents. So in our recreation program, we have a partnership that's called the Recreation Partnership, and all the communities in Tompkins County get together and they pay into this partnership, allowing kids from all the municipalities have equal access to really great programming opportunities. And it also means that those kids have opportunities to interact with one another and really get to know each other in ways that they wouldn't if they just had, recreation activities in their local town. And then some of our other programs, like in youth development, we get support from different foundations and things. And so, you know, we have to write grants regularly and we have to do the reporting on that. And, you know, that can be a challenge sometimes because, you know, sometimes the way kids identify or how they see themselves doesn't match up with, you know, say the criteria that the federal government sets or, you know, different things like that. So,
okay. So, you know, it sounds like, you know, on the surface at least, oh, it sounds like things are all perfect and everything's easy in your life. Is there anything that, like, what keeps you up at night as far as, you know, your overall office in your agency and the work that you all are doing?
I think, you know, we've had a very challenging couple of years, of course, with the pandemic. And, you know, one of the things that happened to us in 2020 was the leadership of the city couldn't really see how we could possibly continue to do programming under pandemic conditions, under lockdown, all that kind of thing. We weren't as familiar with Zoom at that point. And so 90% of our staff got furloughed. And so, you know, I think while we were able to bring back the majority of our staff, you know, our programming is still not at the same levels it was before the pandemic. And I think, you know, the other challenge that we also really face is just making connections and finding the people who need us the most. They're typically the folks who are least likely to reach out, are least likely to respond to, you know, surveys or flyers or things like that. So we have to be incredibly creative about, you know, building relationships within those communities and making ourselves accessible and coming to them and meeting them where they are so that they can feel, you know, that this is a place that they feel confident being, they want their kids to be, and that, you know, we really are enough a part of their community that they feel safe being with us.
Mm-hmm. So how do you go about sort of building that trust?
A lot of it is about relationship. You know, it's really about staff making connections with people in the community, you know, building relationships, and being really reliable. Like if you say you're going to do something, actually do it and follow through. You know, a lot of these marginalized communities have had people promise them things and then really been let down time and time again. And I think, you know, the other thing that we always have to check and make sure is that, you know, our perceived ways of, you know, operating and who deserves what and all of that kind of stuff, we have to make sure that that's not creating additional barriers for folks. And so, you know, having partners that we can work with that are part of the community that can say, hey, hold on a second, you know, if you do it this way, this group of people is going to be, you know, left behind, or they're not going to be able to do it, or those kinds of things, is super helpful to keeping us from being gatekeepers and to really make sure that everything that we offer is open and accessible.
Thank you. So it'd be great if other members of the audience, any brave souls willing to jump in with questions around. We'll go slow. You can go ahead and just turn your camera on, or if you prefer not, you can go ahead and just unmute yourself and ask your question. Oh, Jen, go right ahead.
Sorry. So Suki, you've talked before about kids getting on a bus and off a bus in different places. And I know that's going to sound strange, but I know you've talked about like your people, you need to meet people where they are, and everyone's success looks different. But your job is about keeping like the process and the program safe. Can you talk a little bit more about that? It's one of my favorite things.
Oh. So I kind of see all the different things that we offer. You know, a young person might participate in, when they're on the younger side, in Big Brother, Big Sister, for example, and another kid of the same age might participate in, our football program, for example. And then as they get older, one of them might participate in youth employment service, another one might participate in summer camp or those kinds of things. And so I kind of see it kind of like you would think about a bus route or a bus system, where there's lots of different points where somebody can get on and access the services, and they get off wherever it makes sense for them. And so, it's not everybody has to follow this linear process, but anywhere along the route, somebody can get on or get off based on what their needs are and where they are. And, I think that's super important because, if we only have one definition of success, only a very small handful of people are going to meet that definition. But meeting people where they are and building bridges and scaffolding from where they are to where they want to go, including them in the process of identifying what success looks like, can really mean the difference between them not even trying and them seeing those things as being possible and actually achieving them.
Thank you. Others? Well, one question I was thinking of it was that, so you're offering all these services. You talked about the needs and that individuals have, and you've already talked a little bit about this, but so how do you figure out where the gaps are, not only between what you're offering, but, what other organizations are offering in the community?
That's a great question. I think, my executive director and I had this conversation today that, we have this passionate group of staff. There's about 40 year-round staff that are working at the Youth Bureau, and our summer roster of staff gets close to 400, but there's 40 core folks that really do the work year-round, and they're so passionate that sometimes they are working really hard to kind of be everything to everyone. Because we have the colleges, and because we have because we have a lot of passionate people in our community has a lot of different resources. And so one of the really critical things that allows us to be really successful and to be able to make sure that kids don't fall through the cracks is having really good, solid partners. So like youth employment service in the summer puts almost 200 kids to work. Well, you need work sites for that. So we have about 75 work site partners that are the locations where the teens actually work. And then, in terms of like the academic mentoring programs, there's some kids that are really well suited to, the college discovery program. And there's other kids that we just can't fit into that model, and we can recommend them for the STEP program. We can, that working really tightly with those other partners helps with that a lot.
Like an incredible amount of communication.
Yes.
Coordination is needed. But I see Harris has a question. Go ahead, Harris.
Hi, I am actually currently working with the community outreach program in SHEP, and essentially what we're doing is we are working with refugee children, and we're teaching them math and reading skills during the summer, and also having like a lot of fun with arts and crafts, which really does teach a lot of those lessons. And there's a lot of kids that are really super engaged and excited to be there. But then there's also lots of kids that are having trouble engaging, whether it's from past experiences or fear of a language barrier, etc. And I was wondering if you have any advice from your personal experience of how to engage people that might be kind of scared so they can get the most out of the program.
One of the things that I think has worked really, really well for me, when I was working in the urban 4-H program, the urban outreach program that I worked in, about a third of the kids were from refugee families. And so they were really, we had the whole gamut of, like you said, kids who were super excited to kids who were like, okay, this is not even remotely close to my experience. So one of the things that we did was we partnered the kids up with each other so that they kind of had a buddy, somebody who could kind of look out for them. And we also did a lot of what we also call the Youth Bureau culture share. And so it was like bring stuff from home that's familiar to you. Like, let's decorate the space together. Let's make this space feel like it belongs to you, feel like, you know, you can be comfortable here. And we really did a lot of like talking to families about what the kids like to eat, those kinds of things, so that, you know, I wasn't providing, you know, snacks that I liked, you know, and that the kids were like, oh, you know, to make sure that it was really fitting their cultural needs, their cultural experience, that kind of thing. And we also had somebody who came in and did a lot of cooking. And one of the things that I found is food is a universal appeal for almost everybody, kids or adults. And so, you know, that kind of thing always drew people in. They always wanted to know, oh, what were we cooking, or what, you know, even if they were on the sidelines to begin with, you know, they'd join in if we were cooking or making something that was food related.
Thank you.
You know, one other thing that comes to mind is, you know, you talked earlier about, you know, some of the areas are technically in Appalachia or Appalachia. I never quite know how to say it. You know, of course, and so that makes me think of some of the negative stereotypes around place. Are there ways in which you sort of engage with them around, right? I'm also from a rural area, and there's ways in which I'm, you know, proud of that area. So just curious if you interact or engage with that at all. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, you know, our Pathfinders program is a really good example of that. You know, in addition to the culture share where everybody brings something that's meaningful to them, everybody gets the opportunity at one of the sessions to, you know, we do a lot of, in that program, kids sitting in a group, or I mean in a circle where everybody can see each other, they're all on the same level, and they do group working agreements. They're typically 4th and 5th graders. So, you know, just making sure that they feel connected enough to one another that, you know, the bullying is minimized and that kind of thing. But, you know, one of the other things that the kids have the opportunity to do in that setting is to talk about somebody who's special to them. And 9 times out of 10, the kids will talk about somebody in their family. And then, you know, as the other kids ask questions, they start to talk about, oh, well, you know, I share a room with this person, or there's 5 of us in this room together, or those kinds of things. And so instead of being something that's like exposed as something that they're sharing, and they can be, you know, they carry their own level of pride with that, you know, which is really neat.
Yeah. That's great. Do we have any other questions? No? Is there anything I should have asked you, Suki?
I think, you know, just the most important thing to me is that we're always asking ourselves, what's the impact of the decisions that we're going to be making? Like, who is going to be impacted the most? Will anybody be left out based on the decisions we're making? How will the policies that we're deciding or the choices that we're making positively or negatively impact folks? And I think, you know, when it comes to folks in poverty, folks who are marginalized or minoritized in some way, folks who are disenfranchised, it's really critical to put them at the forefront of thinking about the impact of those decisions. Because it's so easy to just say, oh, this is really efficient and this is the best way to do this. And if we don't keep asking ourselves those questions, we might miss out on, you know, being aware of a really important impact. And so, you know, I think for me, that's one of the things that we are always striving to do, is make sure that the people most impacted or the people most in need of our services are at the forefront of all of the decisions that we make.
Yeah, I'm chair of the local school board, and that certainly, you know, rings true as far as whether it be thinking about, you know, assuming that I might know what's best for students or teachers or some group, and really needing to reach out and make sure all those voices are being heard. It's taken a while for me to learn that lesson, frankly. Early on, I always thought I had so many answers, and now I've realized I have more questions. But anyway, well, if we don't have any other questions, I can see Jen has put a few things in the chat. If you want to learn a bit more about Suki's agency, about the Ithaca Youth Bureau and their programming, I want to thank everyone for joining us, but particularly you, Suki. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and students and other members of our community tonight. To everyone, a reminder that there will be our next Practitioner Insight event will be July 17th. So taking a bit of a break at 7 p.m. where we'll hear from Teresa Lacey in Seattle, Washington. She works at the organization of Undaunted Women, discussing their work assisting newly arrived refugees. You can find information for that to register on shepherdconsortium.org. So once again, thanks everyone. Thank you, Suki. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Have a wonderful 4th, and good night to everybody. Thank you.
Night.
All right. Thank you.